Hello, Kris here, Green Sabre. Welcome to Doom Telly, episode 32. And today I'm going to do another ranking. I was undecided of about 2 or 3 ideas of what I was going to do with this video. And then I just thought, fuck it. I've woken up in a despondent mood. Entirely football based, as some of you may have noticed, may not have noticed. Actually, I'm wearing the Leeds Campione t-shirt from the Square Ball, the greatest fanzine on earth. The last time we had something to celebrate, really, as such. Yeah, from a Leeds fan's perspective, let's just cut to the chase. It's been absolute fucking dog shit now for 18 months. Should have never sacked Bielsa, but that's another story. And we're here where we are now due to fucking bad decisions and basically just been a really shit team. So anyway, back in the Championship, but that's where the real fun is, right, kids? So yeah, I mean, it's just stuff. I've been supporting them since 1986, approximately. I'd latched onto Everton first. That was purely from a mate at school that was an Everton fan. So I latched onto them, and it was my granddad got into me. He's like, no, you're from Leeds. You really should support your own team, your family team. So yeah, there we were. Apologies for the impression there, Gramps. But anyway, yeah, so he got into me in about 1986. I started supporting him then. And yeah, it's been a rocky road ever since. But yeah, so that's why I'm in a foul fucking mood today. Not that I didn't know it was coming, of course. It's been the most fucking badly kept secret in Premier League football forever, just how shit we are. But anyway, so I decided to do a retrospective ranking. And I've gone with an Iron Maiden ranking. Now, I know that probably upset a few of you that aren't really massive fans, but I'm going to do it anyway. But it's a ranking with a difference. I'm basically just ranking the first 7 studio albums, which for me personally are the only stuff the only records worth listening to in a Maiden front. It's probably another video in itself is this, but the one of a few bands that I can think of just dropped off an almighty cliff after those first 7. And personally, there is nothing, and I say this with great stress on the word, nothing of any value after 1988's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And I do mean that, nothing. There is not one album that's come since then that has made me want to really dive down deeper into. I mean, so Iron Maiden, let's talk. The band that got me into proper heavy metal before Iron Maiden came along, and I may have told this story before, but it was a lad called David in my class at high school, who I was busily rolling on listening to Whitesnake 1987, bits of Van Halen here and there, the obvious ones, Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses. Basically, the only rock and hard rock that I had access to was whatever was on the fucking chart show and whatever was that made its way on the top of the pops, maybe. So, yeah, I'd been rumbling along nicely, listening to that sort of garbage. And then, yeah, David at high school just sort of said, you want to listen to a proper band. And then the day after came in with a 90-minute cassette copy of this masterpiece, Live After Death. And I never looked back. Iron Maiden were the fucking beacon of heavy metal for me. They were my in. Yeah, you could say that Van Halen, Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses were my in. But it was this band that tipped me over in just dual guitar harmonies and fabulous songwriting, epic songs, monsters, and great artwork and imagery and everything about it. I mean, I know they polarise, that some people just think they're cheesy garbage, others think they're the greatest band ever. And I sit somewhere in the middle of that, basically, as I alluded to earlier. For me, after 1988's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, there's nothing worth listening to after that. Nothing. Maybe the odd song here and there. Fear of the Dark, I can think of as one. The song, that is. I mean, it's like the Blaze Bayley years. Blaze Bayley is a great guy by the sounds of it, great vocalists. I was never a massive fan of Wolfsbane, the band that he came from, but he was sort of on a hide into nothing in Maiden. He followed the guy that was, in some people's eyes, Maiden's greatest singer, maybe not in mine, but we'll go into that. So he was on a hide into nothing following Bruce Dickinson, but then also he was just unlucky that the 2 albums that he's on are shit. And that's through no fault of his. It's the songwriting's just fucking gash at that point. And that was Maiden's problem. I mean, they've always been a bit like a stuck record, but yeah, you've got to have some way of trying to get out there. But anyway, I digress. So it's a ranking of just the good stuff for me personally. I'm not ranking any of the other fucking stuff. Shenjutsu, the new one or whatever it's called. The first single off of it sounded really good. Rest of it, shite, as usual. Same old, middle of the road fucking plodding fare from Maiden. So, I'm not putting this in my ranking. It's an honourable mention because it's a live album. So, I don't know whether it strictly sits in the ranking sense. So, I'm not going to put it in. But I'm going to give it an honourable mention as my gateway to Maiden. This was the gateway drug. And kids, drugs are cool if this is anything to go by. So, yeah. Shout out to Live After Death. So, my ranking from 7 through to 1. I'm coming in at number 7, which I imagine will astound some of you out there. But the 7th best Maiden, in my eyes, Maiden album, is this. Yes, Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. Very much Iron Maiden's Sgt. Pepper's, for me, if you will. The one that gets talked about, the one that gets lauded, and bang average, personally. For me, I mean, I say bang average, they're all good at this point. But for me, of the Maiden canon, overrated to fuck, very much like Sgt. Pepper's is of the Beatles. Just really overrated. There's some crackers on it, don't get me wrong. The title track, of course, Number of the Beast. You've got Children of the Damned, brilliant. 22 Acacia Avenue, which I never really want. The lyrics are fucking awful. Yeah, just sort of a waste of time. Invaders, interesting opening track, but I never liked the chorus. It was all a bit major key, sort of invaders. It was just, no, I never warmed to the chorus. It always gave me issues. But Run to the Hills, of course, classic bit of Maiden on there. But very much Maiden's Enter Sandman for me. And, you know, just Maiden's Smells Like Teen Spirit. It just played to absolute death. And I'm bored of listening to it now. So, Gangland, Cracker, and of course the closer, Hallowed Be Thy Name. So don't get me wrong, it's a great record. And there's some stellar tracks on here. I just think it's a bit wishy-washy in places. I mean, a lot of people say that's like Maiden's strongest artwork as well. I disagree there as well. I mean, it's decent. Great bit of Derek Riggs there. But, yeah, overall, 7th in my Maiden collection. So I've probably already upset a lot of you at that point. But, you know, don't get upset. You know, life is about these subtle differences that we all have. So where am I going next? Number 6. And it is the debut album. The classic, self-titled 1980 ripper that is Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden. I think in the grand scheme of things, this was about the 4th Maiden album I heard. And again, it's different. As a lot of you will know, the reason that Black Sabbath took me so long to get my head around it was because I'd heard all the bands that they influenced before I heard them. So, as some of you will no doubt agree, it's very difficult to go. It's quite difficult to go into the pioneers, the inventors, the classics, without a kind of already formed opinion on what's great, what's heavy, what's this, what's that. I mean, like stuff like before I'd already heard Maiden, I'd already heard Judas Priest, I'd already heard Motorhead, I'd already heard Metallica, Slayer, before I got to Black Sabbath. And Maiden was sort of like the forerunners, so I got to them early in my metal career, if you will. But this debut album, like I say, was about the 4th one that I listened to, I think. I got Live After Death on that cassette off a mate, and then I think Killers was the next tape that I bought. So anyway, so this obviously sounds a bit rough around the edges now when you compare it to the other stuff. I am a lover of Di'Arno's voice. For me, Di'Arno, I don't know, great, this is probably going to cause a lot of consternation, but Di'Arno's the finest Maiden vocalist for me, personally. And there's some absolute fucking rippers on this album. Prowler, Remember Tomorrow, an absolutely breathtaking, lovely little beautiful tune. I watched a Maiden ranking on Analog Attack. If you don't know the Analog Attack YouTube channel, give it a fucking look. I'll probably put a link to one of the Maiden, but they did like a Maiden ranking. Him and Chris Corey did a fabulous ranking of every Maiden album, and then sort of did what brilliant. Anyway, but one of the things I digress. One of the things that it said was the track listing on this was a little skew. Remember Tomorrow, although a fucking wonderful tune, maybe second on the playlist, wasn't the best. I think maybe that should have come 3rd or possibly 4th. And there were a couple of tracks that were like the B-side on. Oh, which one was it? Was it Running Free? So, one of them anyway. A couple of tracks that didn't make it onto this album that might have been a good fucking addition. But of course you got the title track, Charlotte the Harlot, Strange World, Transylvania. They're all good on here. All tracks are good. And only because it's a bit raw and a bit rough around the edges, and the debut album, is that why it's at number 6. But I do love this record. But yeah, my number 6, Iron Maiden's classic debut. Okay, this is probably going to upset Gaz now, because it's his favourite, I believe. But my number 5, Peace of Mind. For years, this might have been my favourite, or certainly second favourite. It was right up there in my top 3 for most of my Maiden listening life. And I don't know, because I'm getting older, whatever it is, it's just slowly slipped down the ranking. Again, it's almost without fault, this record. It's that good. But like I alluded to earlier, all of Maiden's top 7 are without fault. They're just... I've never known it in a band that were so consistently good for so long. Every album that came was better than the last almost, or was just strong as fuck, and they were just unassailable. Absolutely fucking ripping. From 1980 through to and including 88, they were without rival in some respects. They were just consistently fantastic. And again, another case in point, like I say, was a lot higher up. I love how it starts, and I love how they show off Nico McBrain, who open, because this was the first Nico album, I believe. So you open with that classic drum roll that goes into Where Eagles Dare. That's a great tune. Revelations on here. Flight of Icarus. Die With Your Boots On. Does the Trooper open side 2? It does. Then you've got like Still Life, Quest for Fire, Sun and Steel, which are not filler, but they're not as strong as other tracks on here, and that's why it's been nudged down to my number 5. But the closing track, To Tame a Land, you know, Dickinson's bit about the June, you know, the story of June as such, like, and beautiful. And we're around the time here where each album had a sprawling epic. Maiden would often end with a sprawling epic, and this is one of their finer ones, personally. I think it's a terrific, terrific song, and a great way to end this album. Great artwork too. I really like this artwork. Not much of a gatefold, as you can see at the back, but yeah, just something really that draws you in. And like I say, it was my number 1, number 2 for years. And I slowly dropped down the order. So my number 5, Peace of Mind, 1983's Peace of Mind. My number 4 is the album that followed it. And I imagine, gasp, everyone will be thinking, oh, I was sure that was going to be a number 1. Well, it isn't. My number 4 is Powerslave. Some of the best artwork on a metal album, period. But certainly some of Maiden's best artwork. It is just phenomenal. But that and some of the some of the album structure and some of the songs why it's just dropped off slightly. When you look at this, you think ancient Egypt and and then I think the album almost gives it a false concept album as a sense. You look at that and the title track, of course, Powerslave, and you think, yes, an ancient Egypt concept album sounds fucking fabulous, but it isn't. Powerslave's the only track that remotely even fucking touches on ancient Egypt, as far as I'm concerned. The rest of it isn't. You've got Aces High to open, straight into 2 Minutes to Midnight, both of which kind of like World War II tunes, if you will, as such. Like, I mean, 2 Minutes to Midnight is about the fucking doomsday clock, you know, the kind of DEFCON 1 kind of thing. But anyway, I digress. But I've alluded to it before. I can't remember which video it was on, but you'll struggle to find a greater 1-2 punch to open an album. Aces High into 2 Minutes to Midnight is just Maiden firing on all cylinders. Absolutely stunning stuff. But that is where, for me, why this album doesn't make it top 3. Because after that, you've got Lost for Words, Big Horror. I like an instrumental piece. Flash of the Blade, then the Duelists to finish off side A, before ripping into side B with the title, with Back in the Village, and followed by the title track. And then the sprawling epic monster that is possibly my favourite Maiden tune ever, Rhyming the Ancient Mariner, that finishes this. Although, I have to say, I prefer the live version from Live After Death to the studio album. I think Bruce's vocals have got a better dynamic on it. But yeah, I pushed out most people's number 1 comfortably, but pushed down to number 4 because I think it lacks a thread, and I think there is just a little bit of filler on this album. If I, shock horror, if I do say so myself. It's not quite the finished, all-encompassing piece like my top 3 all are, I would say. Now, I know there's a couple of friends that'll be like, you've put both fucking synth Maiden records above Powerslave and Peace of Mind. What the fuck? Yeah, I have, and I've thought long and hard about this. And these, the 2 synth Maiden records have grown and they'd have been like 6 and 7 for years on end. But I love them more and more over the years, and I've just got more enjoyment out of them ever since, and diving back into them. And now when I dive back into Maiden, it's the latter 2 of the great period that I might go to. So my number 3, while we're on that subject, is the last great Iron Maiden album for me, 1988's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Now, I adore this artwork. I just adore it. It's simple compared to a lot of Maiden ones, but it's not. I mean, if you look at the kind of like the detail there in Eddie on the front, and I just love. And yeah, this feels like a concept album. Oh, well, I mean, it sort of is really, basically, based on the book. I forget who wrote it, but The Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And again, yeah, nice sort of use of nice back cover there as well. But I think this is a truly exceptional record. And as I've just said before, Maiden's last great record. All the songs on here are brilliant, but there are some absolute masterpieces, ones that people don't talk about quite so often. Only the Good Die Young is a great way to finish. The Clairvoyant, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, the title track. You've got The Evil That Men Do, Can I Play With Madness, Infinite Dreams, Moonchild, and just to finish off, you've got The Prophecy on here as well. What I love about it is its all-encompassing thread. There is clearly a story going on here that works perfectly as album structure and with the artwork. It's a whole collective piece, and that's why I love it. Yes, there's synth on here, but I love how they incorporate it. It's not too in your face, it's just sort of there. I mean, I suppose you could say the opening to Moonchild is fairly in your face, but I just think Maiden are brilliant at it, and they're great use of synth, and that's why that's my number 3. And the last great album with Bruce Dickinson as well, because I think his vocals start getting a little... It all gets a bit parody of itself almost after this. My number 2, because I've realised that I've nearly clocked up 20 minutes already. My number 2 is the album that preceded that one. Somewhere in Time. And my favourite bit of Maiden artwork. There are so many Iron Maiden Easter eggs on this cover alone. You can just get lost in it. Now, I'm not going to say this is a doom metal record, but what I love about it is it's quite somber. It's quite depressing subject matter. They've been on. This is the album that came after Powerslave and the massive tour that they did, the years and years long tour around the world, playing everywhere about 1 million fucking times each. And this is the album that followed it. So quite a long layoff for them. Was it like a kind of 3-year layoff between the records? I mean, most of which was spent touring, doing the Live After Death tour. World Slavery Tour was it called? Anyway, and this is what comes after it, and you can tell that they're not all in a particularly happy place, and the subject matter on the record confirms that. It doesn't sound like they're all getting on particularly as well, and I think because of that, it makes for a really enjoyable listening experience. It's a really, for Iron Maiden, it's a really deep record. There's a lot of angst in there and sort of sorrow and mournful kind of resentment you can hear in there. And you can, I mean, I've probably built that up to far too high grandiose standards, but there's so much about this record that wants you to go back in on it. You've got the classic opener, Somewhere in Time. And then, what's it called? The fucking most famous song? Oh, Wasted Years. Which is Adrian Smith at his very finest songwriting best, if you will. Like, you know, Sea of Madness, Heaven Can Wait, another quite sort of grandiose sort of Bruce Dickinson vehicle there. The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner has always been one of my favourites on here, and the B-side. And the B-side in particular gets quite sort of deep, quite heavy. You've got Stranger in a Strange Land, that's a great tune. Deja Vu, and another one of their sprawling epic greats, Alexander the Great, to finish. There's some beautiful guitar harmonies on here, some quite mournful guitar harmonies, and it's just, as a collective and a piece, I think it works stunningly well. Probably, for years, would have been my number 7, because I was unable to get my head around it until I got to my more later years and became a depressing old curmudgeon, and it made more sense to me. So, yeah, but my number 2 of greatest all-time Maiden records. My number 1, as many of you will have probably worked out by now, is the Sophomore, the second album from 1981, Killers. Just a fantastic piece of work. I always felt it was a bit unfair what they did to Paul Di'Anno, and it was always sold that kind of like it didn't have the range needed to take Maiden to the next level. Well, I'd argue that. I thought he had a perfect range for Maiden. And I thought, yeah, you could sort of say, yeah, but would they get typecast? Well, yeah, because, I mean, getting typecast wasn't a fucking problem for Maiden, was it? I mean, fucking rinse and repeat, but with a lot of it. But if this is the way he went out with Maiden, then fucking hats off. It is a stellar way to finish. But I love this. I love Di'Anno's vocals on here. I love all the songs on here. I love how the album's structured. I love the opening tune, the instrumental of the Ides of March that goes straight into Wrathchild. And it just, you've got Murders in the Rue Morgue. That's another absolute fucking ripper. And you've got some prog elements on here as well. The track that I'm thinking of is like Prodigal Son. You've got Drifter on here and Purgatory. Genghis Khan's on there. Another Life. Innocent Exile. Every song is a banger. It's without fault, this record. Like most of the others. But there's no filler on here either. This is the Maiden that I want to go back to the most. Now, it was the first actual studio album that I bought of Iron Maiden's with my hard-earned pocket money way back when. 1988, it will have been. Yeah. And I loved it from that point onwards. And it was so different as well, because, of course, before that, all I'd heard was Live After Death. So all I'd heard was Dickinson. And yeah, very, very different vocal approach. But there was something I liked about this slightly more than Bruce Dickinson. Bruce Dickinson's voice is very much chalk and cheese. I think you either like it or you don't. I like it, but I don't love it. Di'Anno's voice, I love. And yeah, so anyway, I could sit here and talk about these forever. That's my Maiden ranking. Do with that what you will. if you're into Maiden, I'd quite like to see yours, although most of you have probably already done it by now. And you may include some of the albums that I just shamelessly fucking wrote off because I don't have the time, nor the inclination, nor the fucking patience to go back and dive into bog standard, fucking semi-decent Maiden albums. That's the good stuff right there. So if you're new to Maiden, which would surprise me quite honestly if you sat here watching this, those 7 studio albums and Life After Death is the 8th one. Go, check them out. So that'll do. That's my Maiden ranking. Quick Green Sabre update. We have our next gig, Lizard Fest 28 at Darkland Brewery, Halifax. This coming Saturday, 3rd of June. I think we're on sometime around 3:30, 4 o'clock, something like that. We're first band on. So if you want to come and see us, get there early. Darkland Brewery do a incredible selection of fine ales and so on and so forth. So if drinking's your bag, get yourself down there as well. I'm driving, so I'll be on the fruit shoots, I'm afraid. But I'm still just as big an arsehole without the alcohol. So it'd be nice to see some of you there. Yeah, then we've got another gig in Bradford at the Underground supporting Kill the Witch at the end of the month, 25th, the Sunday 25th of June, I believe. After that, we currently have a bit of a gap in the calendar and we're thinking at some point around July, August, we're going to try and get that studio time booked. Although which songs we're going to do now is that we've got the happy problem of too many songs now. I mean, we just sort of started on writing a new one that just came out of nothing last night at rehearsal. Rehearsal that went fucking brilliantly, by the way. If those 2 sets that we ran through last night are anything to go by, this gig's going to be a fucking smasher. So watch this space. But yeah, that'll do for now. So my next update will be after this Lizard Fest gig. So it will likely be a gig report, rundown, Green Sabre update. And I'll be doing a collection update as well, a tag on the end of that, because I've a few additions to my collection which I've not shown you all as yet. Until then, though, you will just have to stay patient. Thanks for watching. Again, thanks for my sort of smattering of new subscribers as well. We're getting nearer to 125, 130, so the more the merrier. But yeah, if you've not liked this, please give it a like. If you don't subscribe, please subscribe. It's all really helpful. But enough of the fucking hard sell. Thank you for watching. It is much appreciated. Until next time, I will see you then. Ta-ta.